welcome everybody. We are just waiting for a few people to trickle in and then we're going to make a start. Just to make you all aware, we are now recording the session. Okay, so I'm going to make a start because we have got lots to talk about today. So, welcome everybody to our third session in this series of what we are calling our difficult conversations. Today is robots versus carers, replacing in-person care workers with tech. I have a phenomenal panel joining me to talk today about, you know, are we really replacing carers with tech? Is tech supporting them to do better care? How do workers feel about the narrative? What's the kind of public perception? That's what we're going to be doing today. As I mentioned, we are recording the session. We will then be posting it on YouTube, and there'll be a summary up on our website. We are using Zoom today, so we can't see any of the attendees. But I would really encourage you to post in the chat with any questions you might have, but also any comments, anything you want to say as we move through the questions. Because I know this is a topic that a lot of you have opinions on, and that's the whole point of this series, to get people talking and thinking about the conversations that are actually quite difficult to have. Um, there's certainly conversations that are difficult to have in a public setting. We talk about this all the time. I'm sure none of you manage to go to events where there's a fancy robot or where there's someone demonstrating the next tech that's going to revolutionize care, and it doesn't lead to a conversation where you're kind of like, well, yeah, but is it the right thing to do? Do we want it? Is it going to deliver what we expect? We're having these conversations in care all the time. And one of our reasons for doing this was that we were like, how do we lift that up a bit? How do we give people the opportunity to engage in these conversations in a really kind of meaningful way and also create a bit of a space where people can disagree? Because social care is not a monolith. We don't all think the same things. We all have our own experiences of social care. We all have our own views of social care. We've all come into it via different routes. And I love hearing about all of the various routes people enter social care through. It's usually I tripped and I fell and now I work in care. Or, life took me on this turn and I suddenly learned that this whole world of care even existed. And I think that really changes our viewpoint. Um, I think for us, the three topics that we've have are obviously rooted in technology. This is the one that I find gets people the most kind of like diametrically opposed. You either love the idea of a robot or the idea of it just creeps you out so much. We know that globally, this is being touted as the next solution. We're all going to have robots. We won't need carers. It's seen as a real cost saving, although I've yet to see a robot that doesn't cost tens of thousands of pounds. Um, and that robots. Oh, Calvin, do you want to come in?
Yeah.
Go for it.
Can can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yes,
Yeah.
go for it.
Okay. It was one of the things I put down. I just happened to do a little review on bits and pieces before the meeting as to catch up. For example, what do you define as a robot? Anyway, that your point basically engaging in discussing and exchange of views, and you're saying that you have meetings where everybody's pushing robots. I'm a carer, and I
Hmm.
care for mum who's got dementia. My dad's the same. I wasn't a carer, but that's where I've wound up being.
Yeah.
My wife is looked after autistics at schools for 10 years until she basically broke down, as did all the other carers at the
Yeah.
team at the place. The people in care are second to none. Anyway, one of the short YouTubes I just watched gave some figures, but it's going from the IT side of things, right? And I just scribbled a bit down here. This is the caregivers. This is just one portion of care, which is elderly, which is my thing. Chrissy is younger children, like with autistic spectrum. Caregivers for the elderly, AI robotics market estimated to be worth nearly $3 billion.
I mean, that's enormous. I tell you what, Calvin,
Absolutely,
we've not done every.
absolutely. However, Yeah, if we look at that market currently with human carers, it's purely looked at as a cost.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I tell you what, Calvin, we've not done everyone's introductions yet. I'm just mindful
Yeah,
that I've missed a bit. So
yeah,
let's do
sure.
our introductions because I want to get into this with you. So let's start with introductions of everyone, and then we'll get into this big conversation. We'll bring everyone else in as well. So, Kelvin, why don't you tell me firstly who you are? You've given us a little bit of
Okay.
an insight and how you ended up in social care.
Well, okay. I got into it through my parents.
Yeah.
My background is completely, utterly different. Advising architects and engineers on fire protection to structural steel and concrete. That's offshore petrochem, nuclear power plants, construction projects, all sorts. Just go and have a look at what's going on in the Gulf, and you'll see products like ours that, and sites I've been to, I've wound up on there advising on some of those platforms that have been bombed. Anyway, that's my background. Dad got Dad's really difficult, but he got autistic, dementia. With
Yeah.
we realise a bit of autism in there. He's very much like Donald Trump, and that's the one thing I'm grateful of Donald Trump being there, because now everybody gets what my dad was like. He's the world's
Okay.
expert, and he would tell you why. And if you disagreed, he would go nuclear. So I had to deal with Dad all my life, basically. I didn't realise, but towards the end, it's all getting worse and worse. Mum has full-blown, proper, real dementia. Dad used it as a tool to get attention. And I just got engulfed with this for the last 10, 15 years. We started our own group of carers called Step Ahead, which is a self-help group. Through that, we were involved in rolling out from Wiltshire to Dorset, and now it's going national. Better care for carers, for GPs practice to think about the carers. Because here's me, I gave up my work. I couldn't work anymore. I'm doing all this free of charge.
Yeah.
But your paramedics and the likes, all the problems, if you go to the front line, they'll solve the problems within weeks for nothing. Just use them. I got involved in a Pan Dorset carer steering group through just people spouting out my name. And that's a great example of where it's all going wrong.
Right. Okay.
I wouldn't use, I could use the expletives that I substitute for their PDSG group and what have you, that is close to the real truth as to what they do. The system is well and truly broken, but there are amazing people in there that are worth far more than £3 billion.
Yeah.
If you
Well, let's move on to
really
some of the other
know
people, Calvin, because we've got the other
them.
people joined us on the call. So, Mark, can you introduce yourself for me, please?
Yes, of course. Yes, Kevin's quite right. Though, is that the system is broken under a lot of pressure. So, trying to find the right solution. Who am I? I'm Mark de Penhart Lane. Currently, I'm a senior advisor working for the LGA, the Local Government Association. Although, as Katie in previous webinars has always said, my opinions are my own and not represent the LGA. I've worked in around technology for 35 years. 25 years I've worked in public service, and certainly for the past dozen years I've worked in adult social care, in commissioning technology and digital, and said more recently I advise councils on digital improvement around the whole Internet of Everything, so devices, data, people, processes, and but I think, as you said, how did I get into care? I think actually it probably was because of my parents, well, certainly my mum, who was a nurse in a nursing home, and that was a career for her. I have been a carer, and I know that I will be again. So inextricably linked with it. But I cross that bridge between adult social care, feeling and knowing, and the kind of around technology and trying to understand and how it's applied. So that's me.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mark. Philippa, can you introduce yourself, please?
Well, hello everybody. I'm Philippa Russell. I'm the parent of Simon, who is now 62, was born with brain damage, learning disabilities, complex needs. Simon's birth meant that I and my husband had to leave the Foreign Office. We were travelling all over the world, but we needed to find a life for Simon in the UK. I have always been interested in the potential of new technology to support and partner carers. I'm now Vice President of Carers UK. I represent people with lived experience. I've got an awful lot of lived experience, too much, I think, on the NHS New Hospital programme, because what happens in hospital profoundly influences what happens when people go out, and digital opportunities may facilitate that. But thinking of Simon, we were pioneers. I was at the time Director of the Council for Disabled Children. We were pioneers in enabling people like Simon with complex needs to live in the community. And because of my husband's new role with the EU and finding the right people, we were one of the pioneers who tested telecare, the use of sensors, etc., to create a smart house for Simon so that he didn't need to go into residential care, and there weren't many options for people like Simon at the time, and he could live at home with ourselves and with support workers. And it worked until Simon became very ill. He's recently spent a year and a half in a nursing home. But the nursing home is now going digital, which is great. And Simon moves out in a month's time, not sadly to his old house because he can no longer get upstairs, but to a newer, more accessible house. But we are really excited, interested pioneers again to see the extent which we can develop what I almost call hybrid care, with digital supporting the human presence. And one of the things that I and many other carers are concerned about is how we get the balance right for people like Simon, who can't use a digital device on his own. He can't read or write. He has some communication skills, but he's a people pleaser, so he says yes to everything. And we want to get that balance right. And I'll end by saying I actually saw the use of robots with young disabled people in Japan before COVID. I was out there for a piece of unrelated work, and that really showed me the potential, but it also showed the need to think very carefully how we're going to use the new digital technology to augment what is already good in human services, and to make sure that we don't actually push people like Simon into boxes, that we overcategorize, that we limit his capacity to engage with the real world. But the potential was there, and the dialogue was lively. And I'm grateful to be here today because we need to talk about AI. It is a gateway to the future if we use it properly.
Fantastic. Thanks, Philippa. Mohammed, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much, first of all. And my name is Mohammed Ahmed, and I'm based in Ipswich. I've been in care for last 4 years. My story is quite similar to Calvin. My field was like completely opposite to the care. I did my master in business analytics. But what bring me in care is like same as Calvin, my family. I used to take care of my grandmother when I was in Pakistan. She was paralyzed. Her knees got replaced, so she got like bit difficulty to use the commode and the other stuff. When I used to take care of her, and I know like how she feel blessed like when someone help her to doing this stuff. So that bring me in this field, like how we can make like changes in humans. That's all about my story. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mohammed. And Becky, can you introduce yourself as well, please?
Hi, I'm Becky Insulton-Blevin, the Digital Care Development Lead at the National Care Forum. And my own background spans around 25 years in the not-for-profit care sector. I previously cared for my grandma who had a diagnosis of dementia, And that was when I was much younger. And then I was a chef and bar manager in Marbella. And then when I returned home, I thought that I could use my personal experience and hospitality skills more constructively and focus more on people. I've worked across a range of roles, from frontline care through to leadership and digital transformation for an organisation that was leading in the sector at the time. And I think that helps me bring a perspective that's rooted in practice and the realities of always thinking about people. And currently I'm leading on the Liverpool City Region Adult Social Care Testbed, which National Care Forum are delivering in partnership with the Liverpool University. And the focus on that is, firstly, how we can make better use of data and day-to-day care, how we can test and shape emerging technologies and settings, working directly with people who are in receipt of care and support, the families, frontline staff and providers. And thirdly, how we can build digital confidence and capability right across the workforce, including unpaid people as well, to help them feel more equipped and not overwhelmed by the pace of change. And that's why, I'm really pleased to be part of this discussion today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. And now I'm really pleased that such a broad array of you have agreed to be on our panel today. I think we're going to have a really lively discussion. So just for those of you who joined us, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a series of questions. I will open it up to the entire panel, indicate if you'd like to answer. But if you have questions or comments during our chat, please do pop them in the chat, because this is a conversation for everyone, not just those of us on the panel. So first question is, where do robots genuinely add value in care today? And where is the human relationship irreplaceable? Who'd like to come in? Calvin, let's start with you.
Okay. I'm surrounded by robots in some regards. I use 3D printers and I program CAD and stuff these days whilst being stuck here. So I am pro technology. We've got, my mother's now at a stage where we're stuck at her house, and she's bedroom upstairs, the conventional sort of detached house. But we are really struggling with her going up and down the stairs because her bedroom's upstairs, and she is going to pull us down, and we're going to have an accident. So we need a device. The stair lifts, but it's not just the stair lift. We could really do with an assistant, a mechanical assistant, which a robot these days comes in. But we need the skills of human beings, because my mum, she's a Geordie and she's stubborn and hard, so she won't be told anything. So you have to encourage her and deflect her into situations. But she also needs interaction, entertainment. Now, she's known me all my life, so whatever I say or do or whatever is just plain wrong. Chrissy, my wife, is much better at it, but because we're trying to make mum do things that she has to do, it's getting difficult. But there's tricks and methods by which you can introduce things. Humor is a good one, and we've got a little fluffy rabbit that we make do things. So this could be an area where robotics could come in, but I don't think AI can do the silly little jokes that humans do and read the person the way a human can read a person.
Interesting, yeah.
So I can see some great advantages, particularly with physical helping, but you need a human touch.
Well, it's like that next stage of the hoist. Like, if you remember, the care worker, the tradition for nurses and care workers is that your back went from lifting people, and hoists have come a really long way. And it's the next like technological advance of hoists. And for anyone who's ever read Robots Won't Save Japan, highly recommend it. That one of the pieces of technology there was basically a hoist that was more like a pair of arms holding an individual. That's great. Mark, do you want to come in next?
Yes, I agree with Calvin's point about, humans do, the best thing for humans to do is the humanity. And picking up a little bit on what Philippa said, she used the use of word augmentation. And my position is that we don't need robots to be carers. We need robots to handle the tasks that stop humans being carers. And I think that probably is that fundamental position that I certainly come from. I think robots definitely have a role. And I think someone coined it as like 3Ds. That robots are really good at those tasks which are dull, logistics, things like that. They're dirty, or they're dangerous, or maybe the dangerous might apply in Kelvin's situation about robots accessing areas which is hazardous for humans to go to, but also robots can do heavy lifting. We talk about the development of soft and hard exoskeletons in terms of reducing fatigue, reducing MSK injuries in the care workforce, which is a significant reason why people leave. It certainly damaged my mother's back in lifting people. So there's roles in that. Logistics. I know that some hospitals, I think it's Milton Keynes, are using sort of little robots to deliver stuff, whether it's meds or paperwork between departments. A minute or two saved in doing that frees someone else up to do something. And I think there are real occasions where robotics and robots can provide dignity. I don't necessarily want a human to do some of the things or see things or clean me or whatever it is, and actually having something which is non-judgmental, it's not a human, might help preserve my dignity. So I think there's great value, but as Kelvin said, the nuance, the sensing, the feeling, the connection, and that nuance and knowing the history of the person cannot be replaced. But we can use these things to free up the human to do that.
Sorry, just choking there, everybody. I think it's really interesting. One of the things since I came into tech that I've been really struck by is that the thing that we sell in care is human empathy. That's what we're selling. The tasks are the bit that can be outsourced. So I think that is really interesting. And on the point around doing dangerous things, this week I was at Digital Health Rewired, which is a big health tech conference, and met a robot, which for the first time I was like, oh, I'm sold a little bit there. And it's a robot that is used with children going through radiotherapy. And the robot spends time, it's very like animatronic, AI backed. It's very like responsive and mirrors behavior. But they use it on the wards for children to get used to it. And then when they have to go into the bunker for radiotherapy, the robot can go with them because their parents can't. And it's half the time it takes for radiotherapy treatments to be conducted on children. I was like, oh, that I like. That's one of the first ones where I've genuinely felt like moved by something that is tackling a real problem. Mohammed, do you want to come in next?
Oh, yeah, so sorry, my thing was still on mute. Yeah, I completely agree with Mark and Kelvin. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. I think like there are some like certain things where robots can't be can't replace the human one. Like as Kelvin and Mark said, they can't presume the emotions of the client while giving them personal care. If they are just doing the task, they will be only they will be strict to the task, not doing anything with the emotions. Like if they are sore somewhere or anything like that, they can't see that. Or if you performing the personal care, changing pads, to be very honest, they can't see that what the client is thinking about. They can't take care of their dignity. They can't giving robots can giving them only orders, not asking them in a way. And if we see, I have a client who used to joke a lot, and sometime like joking with the client, like they see us as friends, and they joke with us like in a like they swear on us, but we know that they are like doing in a like in a joking way, not seriously swearing on us. We can see by the face, but if it's a robot, they can like gonna like raise the safeguarding concern about that, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there are some certain things like where robots are not like humans are not replaceable, but yeah, there are some things where robots like can take over, like they like, and it is very useful for the clients also. Like if you see Alexa is like a great initiative, like a great thing. Like you can like if someone is bedbound, they can ask Alexa to turn off lights, turn on music, take anything for them, so that's really give them an independency. So, and they can remind them about like for the dementia patients, they can like Alexa can remind them to take pills. But like if they don't take pills, and uh, like how they gonna know, or if they're hiding somewhere, that's
Yeah.
only human can see that, like if they're hiding, or like if they really take it, if they really swallow medication. So yeah, there are some certain things where robots and AI are useful, but there are some certain tasks and some certain things where human must not be replaceable.
Yeah, it's that human nuance, isn't it, and discernment. I think you make a really good point because, to your point, is like you need to keep humans for that dignity, and then Mark's point is that actually we can preserve dignity with the use of robots, and it's not linear, it's not clear, it's not just one thing.
Yeah.
Philippa, do you want to come in on that point?
Yes, and I did want to come in on that point because I think we're in danger of seeing robots and AI as somehow a sort of discrete entire package which can be delivered to somebody and will make their lives all right. Good care is invariably collaborative. Whether you're thinking of social care, of health care, of physio, a provider of equipment, a number of different people, different skills will be involved. And it seems to me the great strength, if it all works out well, of AI and robotics is that actually the robotics, the digital advances, can enhance the quality of care and life that people experience. Because needing a high level of care like my son is actually very intrusive. Would any of us really want often a different range of people coming in and out of our homes the whole time? Would we feel in control? Probably not. We'd be waiting anxiously for the key in the lock. And one of the things my son wanted to do was to actually be able to spend the night on his own in his own little house and be secure. Now we had all the usual alarms that you have, but we were able, because of a project in the EU, which we were involved in, to actually develop a system of sensors which were connected to his television, which he insisted on having in his room and which he operated by remote control. And by pressing the green switch, he could move around the whole of the house and see that there weren't burglars. He was very, very anxious, and I think many disabled people are, about what would happen if there was a fire or somebody broke in. And it reassured him so much that in the end we didn't need to use the device. But what I hope is, and the thing that actually worries me, with people like my son, to find what really matters to him and to develop a life which works for him and therefore the people who support him, we have to have that human contact as well. There have to be trusted people who can actually interpret what Simon really means. You ask him something, he'll say yes. That might be entirely the wrong answer. So I hope we're thinking of collaborative care. I think we will need a number of tests and trials. We were so privileged to be part of this EU project. Now, alas, we're not, of course, in the EU, and we can't go on to the next stage now that Simon's 62 and significantly physically disabled. But I also see great potential in supporting and maintaining the equipment that people need to live well. And equipment isn't a substitute again for people. It's a way of augmenting quality of life. So I think we're on the cusp of some very great things, but I worry that some people could be lost in the system. And just a final question here. We're not a totally digitalized, if I can use that word, society yet. A lot of people have difficulty with their smartphones if they actually have one. If we are going to move into this high-tech world with the huge advantages it could bring, then I think we need to invest much more in accessible technology, and much greater than extent than I said earlier in the program, I think before I came on, Openreach suddenly announcing to me that it was coming to cut off Simon's landline in 2 weeks' time without any thought whatsoever to his telecare system, if he is able to get back to his house, all the equipment, the life that is actually tied up at the moment in a BT line. We've got quite a lot of work to do to really make digital and thereby robotics work for everybody. It has to be a whole society issue, and we have to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point, Philippa. We sometimes, when we get so excited about the robots, we forget about all the underpinnings that need to be there that aren't at the moment. Becky, you've not come in yet on this. Do you want to join with your point?
Yeah, really just, agreeing with what everyone else has said. And I think it's really important, that where we can kind of automate them repetitive tasks, physical or time consuming to, the people or our workforce. I think the most important thing is giving time back to care so that people can focus on people and not them tasks. I'm really just building on what Philippa said about for me and the people that I've spoke to and worked with around this. They see the real opportunity around independence and giving people more control over their own routines, and not replacing that empathy and that human touch, really. I think as well, people have said that the best use of robotics for them is when it supports in the background and nobody really notices that it's happening.
Yeah, I think that's right, isn't it? It's about what people want. Mark, you're on
Yes.
mute.
Yeah, no, sorry about that. I had a problem finding the audio button. Picking up, Philippa is absolutely right. This idea that if this stampede to the next big thing, it just cuts people off. In terms of the investment goes in that direction, but the other channels, we talked about it in previous webinars about sort of degrading the services which are non-digital, and thereby creating a degree of isolation or a second-rate service if you don't take the technology which is being offered and things being designed about that. So we've got to be really mindful of that, because presenting this technology as the only choice, well, it's not a choice, is it? It's a coercion, and that's deeply problematic when it comes to basic human rights. People should have and always should have the right to refuse, and by refusing doesn't mean they should do without. And it's incumbent upon the system to provide alternatives. So there is a danger of robotics. If everyone's using it and we replace care, replace the human, replace this, that you form a robotic isolation. It becomes that's it, and the humans take a back seat, and you become a number on a dashboard and something like that, and that's concerning because isolation once again is deeply damaging, but that doesn't also remove the right to be alone, as Philippa said, and care, it can be very intrusive. I was just on a call this morning about care and waking nights and people being checked through the night, and then realizing with the introduction of technology, which was less intrusive, that this person had a much better night's sleep rather than being interrupted and checked on by a human, which was found to not be necessary. But at the same token, the presence of that technology was reassuring, and they got a better night's sleep. Their care needs were met, and the package of care went from £8,000 a week down to £6,000 a week. So that's a significant saving for someone with high acuity needs. So the dial is constantly shifting on this. And for me is that the humans, or the collaborative effort, is that people's needs change, ebb and flow throughout a day, throughout a week, throughout the years, and whatever. It's not one once and done. And humans need to be there to pick up the nuance, to see the person, to see how they are now, not what they were, and meet those needs now and their aspirations in the future. So that needs humans to do it. They can't step away. Thank you.
That's interesting. I think you've stumbled actually onto our next question, Mark. So I'm going to open that up to everybody, and it's, so who should decide which care tasks are appropriate for robotics, and how do we ensure that decisions are fair and transparent in a sector where decision making around care is already really difficult? Calvin, you've got your hands up, so I wonder if you've got a point on this as well. You're on mute, Calvin.
Sorry, I was kind of agreeing with all the above mentioned bits and pieces. Also, sort of looking forward in that the technology is becoming more and more familiar with younger generations, and the robotics will. So I think we will come together. But the whole care thing is really about teamwork. And at the moment, the best teamwork is with human beings, because all the time we're having to judge what's happening. We're having to read the other person, the cared for. And there's bits and pieces that we know they like and dislike. Something might have to happen, which they dislike, but you can create a scenario generally, which you know this or think might work, but something happens and then they dislike it, and that solution no longer is a solution. So we're constantly monitoring, and it needs that human interaction. So I think it's a teamwork thing, but also going back to what Philippa was saying, because it is really important, much more bigger, the reliance on the technology. The power goes off, it's stopped. We're also in a situation now in this world where we had a structure, a reliance on allies, and now we've got somebody turning turtle on us, and the whole ecosystem has just been fallen into the power of a handful of huge corporates, which I think we need to be very cautious of.
Yeah, I think that's a fair point as well, Calvin. There are very few experts in this space and very few companies who can deliver probably at the scale that care would need. And what does that mean for us, particularly in an unstable geopolitical climate? Becky, do you want to come in on this? Because you're right at the front with a lot of the companies who are making the robots.
Yeah, definitely, and we've tried to bring everyone along on that journey. Everybody that falls under that umbrella of care, because it's really important, and it should never be decided by one group alone. It needs to be co-produced with the strongest voice coming from the people that are affected. If someone's drawing on care and support, they should have a say whether the technology is used in their life, and the right to say no. Families and carers obviously are important too, and they shouldn't automatically override the person's own wishes. And people that might be in care services, they also need to be part of that conversation because the care services providers and staff, they understand the realities of where technology might help, the in-betweens that tech companies and policymakers don't always think about. And again, they shouldn't be just one-off decisions, because what might be helpful now might not be helpful tomorrow. So I think, to be fair and transparent, people need to understand what the technology does, what the data does, who's accountable for it, and really the right to say no, and they tend to be the main voices.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I think also robotics, where we are right now, certainly it's a massive investment, and people are allowed to change their mind. So, to give a really kind of bland example, I can't abide things that buzz. So you might have sold me a robot that is going to transform my life, but it's been in my house for 2 weeks and all I can hear is the buzz. So that £8,000 robot now is getting switched off and is never going to be turned on again. And we have to have a space where people can make that choice, because people are still people at the end of the day. So the robot might, solve your problem, Calvin. It may get me out of bed and to the stairs and down the stairs, but it buzzes all day. And I personally couldn't abide that. And there has to be a space in care where I can be a person who just hates the buzzing noise.
And I think that's important. I seen the Unitree G1 and it was doing a dance and it was doing all, and I was really taken back by the noise and the clunkiness of it. And I was a bit disappointed. And I was like, there's no way this could go anywhere near people at this stage. And, even thinking about the workflows and the back end systems that could help with, so laundry, and discussing that with, tech developers, and they were just like, infection prevention control, like, what's that? And I was just like, well, you need to factor all this in. That's before we even go near people.
Yeah, absolutely. Mohammed, do you want to come in?
Yes, I want, as I agree with Becky, that like it shouldn't be like someone's, like someone decided to put, robots in and it can go like that. It should be like co-produced. It should be like it shouldn't be like just the care professional, like nurses, doctors, or OT decided to put something in and they can take it in. Like I'm working in home care setting, not in a care home, in community, and people want to have like the clients want to have like whole charge of their house. Like they don't want to be, and they don't want to take orders. They say that that's their house. So the respect, dignity and respect should be, considered. So it should be co-produced by care professionals, patients and families, regulators, and with the developers also of that robots. So like it should be co-produced. I completely agree with Beck here. And if we talk about fairness and transparency, I think we should take it like clear ethical principle. We should use those like to maintain dignity, respect, and safety of the clients. So I think as you mentioned that we should consider like their refusal. We should respect them if they feel safe to use those robots or they don't. And we can also like making like task specific decisions, like what client want them to do, not like what what we want them, like developers or the care workers want clients to to take use of the robots. So it should be just task specific decision, not all of the adoption came in that robots. And it should be like like we have to ensure that there should be like a public transparency about use and about the use of that robot. So like if we are using that robot, so the family and care workers and everyone can see like what they're using this for. Is it like misused or like using properly? So these are some things that we can like make it like fairness and transparency.
Fantastic. And I think you made a really cool point. And it's the first time we've mentioned like the regulators in this space. And we know regulation travels very far behind innovation, but we should be having a conversation about who is ultimately holding the system to account on this, because these decisions are so sensitive. Philippa, do you want to come in on this one?
Yes, well, could I actually come in on the comments you've just made, thinking of regulations and standards? Because one thing concerns me, that we are in a burgeoning commercial market. There's money to be made from robotics and AI, and there is a lot of concern amongst carers that we could actually find ourselves, or the people that we're supporting, being, if you like, directed by commercial interests behind whatever system was being offered to us. So I think one of the big issues for the future is what we mean by assessment for the use not only of robotics or AI, but absolutely anything else that a person needs. The Care Act 2014 set out a model for what I would call co-produced collaborative assessment. We've used the term co-production and collaboration already. And if we don't get the assessment right, I'm worried that people could be driven in particular directions, not through bad will, but just for convenience. And I have reflected, I've tried it with my own son, an experiment with some friends who actually knew him quite well. The transcripts that are used as the basis for evidence. It was interesting how very different some of the transcripts were using different types of AI. And one might have thought Simon was actually a different person according to some of them. Now, that's not a bad thing. If you actually compared the different transcripts, you actually got a pretty good idea of a fairly complex person. But it worries me about an individual who's not likely to get that diversity of opinions and views. And I do think thereby that we need a charter of rights, if you like, for robotics and AI. And I know that Sky is actually working on that at the minute. I think we do need some sort of ethics committee. Ethics are not quite the same as regulation. They are, if you like, looking at the principles, the broader societal moral views, if you like, around a new development. I'm not suggesting that as a means of actually stopping the use of the development of robotics or AI. Both, they're here, they're not necessarily exactly the same. And we need to maximize their impact to give people the greater independence and dignity that they actually want. Robotics AI can be liberating, but we have to beware of going too quickly without proper reflection on the direction that we're traveling in.
Fantastic. And I completely agree. In fact, I'm not sure if you're aware, Philippa, and some of the people attending certainly won't be. Last week, we actually had our second summit in partnership with Oxford Institute of Ethics, Casson Consulting and Digital Care Hub around the ethical use of AI. And we did put out some guidance last year. There's work continuing on that. But again, it's such a small kind of niche at the moment. And organizations are having to make decisions on the hoof that, may not always have the best interests or may not always have the right information. Your son is obviously really lucky that he has individuals who know him that well. For other people in receipt of care, they don't have that relationship with their carers, or they've not been in receipt of care long enough for that, almost that body of data which informs the technology to exist enough. So it's really interesting. Mark?
Yes, actually, Kevin responded to the panelists here, but to Soraya, it's really interesting, isn't it? I think that enabling robots to provide data and information around someone's safety, so they're equipped with sensors which could, detect heart rate, stress levels, sweat, whether they're hydrated or not, whether the house itself is the ambient temperature's too cold, too hot, obviously sensors to do with air quality or carbon monoxide, things like that, can help, provide some information, and sometimes a rushed care worker it might not be, checking on those things. But you're absolutely right. If those things are enabled in that way, then it frees up the carer to spend more time to have that check-in. Because in commissioning of adult social care, it's really and health. It's quite easy to commission knowledge, doctors got the knowledge, that kind of thing. And it's quite easy to commission the hands, the lifting and the shifting. but what price do you put on the heart and the heart-based care, and which we find very difficult to commission against. So if we can give space to that by allowing technology and robots to undertake some of these other things. You're absolutely right, Philippa. It is driven by commercial imperative. This has some significant negative connotations to it, but also the investment, the innovation, the speed to the market in response to market need, enables things to come forward at pace, which can be a good thing. The issue is that we certainly in care and in the public sector, with the pressures that we've got, sometimes feel we need to adopt these things. Sometimes possibly for system reasons rather than person reasons. So we have a kind of technological paternalism, and we decide what it is rather than the individual. We run ahead of our understanding and skills and knowledge of it. So yes, we need to balance the pace of change against the paradigm drag that we have at the moment. The risks. We don't want to do this. We should be too risk averse against those risks that are going wrong. So it's a real balance. Going back to your question, Michelle, about who decides. Well, ultimately, that MDT. With the person who's being cared for right in the center, wrapping it around them. It's they're at the center, the nexus of this is co-produce. That's where it's decided. And it's not decided once and done. And I think there needs to be a balance between understanding robotics and technology in general, where it's additive and subtractive. So a soft exoskeleton which enables detects micro stumbles of someone in the future, to reduce falls, or enables someone who can't have limited mobility to be able to have an independent life, might be great. But the same token, we know what's happened with sat nav and GPS. People can't read a map, and they can't walk out the door without getting lost. I'm saying that very.
Don't personally victimize me, Mark.
Well, no, I find it as well. I mean, as a qualified mountain leader, I've used GPS far too much, and then give me a map, and I'm going, which way up is it? And so I've de-skilled myself, and that's not just as the person de-skilling their ability to live their lives, but just potentially de-skilling the professional as well, and their professional curiosity.
Well, de-skilling the professional is a really important point, and we'll come on to Mohammed, who is a care worker, because our next question is, what would good work look like for carers in services that do use robotics? So, as a care worker, Mohammed, what do you think? What would this, Soraya in the chat made a comment that we're trying to compare like perfect care to perfect robotics, and that it's a false binary, but if we were to kind of create a perfect world where both of them there, what would that look like?
Yes, I want to support Calvin and Mark's perspective for on Soraya's comment that like sometimes it's really like we get 5 minutes in between calls, and we have to go one house to another house, but as Calvin said that the emotional support we perform that can't be performed by robots. Like they can't sound like a human. They can't presume they are what you say, like their emotions. Like if we if they're feeling sad, why they're feeling sad. That's only human can ask them by emotional support that what happened, like did you don't like, are you missing someone, or we can see by the environment what makes them feel lonely or sad or depressed. Sometimes we offer them cup of tea and chat with them, and ask them why you are feeling lonely. We can tell them that we are here for you, to you have some lovely people to come and see you, and the other stuff. And sometime if they're feeling if there is a dinner time and we give them something they like usually they like it, but sometimes they don't they get tired of eating that every day. and we can see by their facial expressions that they don't like it, and we can ask them again, like, I thought that you don't quite like it. I can make you something else, or like if you fancy something else. That what robots can't, can't see, can't see their facial expressions. That why is it so? It's not about human rights versus like versus duty of care. It's about it's about combined thing. It's not about human rights. It's about duty of care. Like care workers, as in the field, I see by myself that some things can't be done by robots, as I see as I said earlier, while performing the personal care. We can't the robots can't see their facial expressions while doing the pad change, or while doing the personal. They can't see their facial expressions, but we can see if they are feeling hurted, or if they're not comfortable, or what's the things are. So these are the things I see that I must say to Soraya, that these are things which we can't rely on robots. That's the thing. This is not about human rights versus duty of care. It's all about duty of care. It's all about in best, what is best for the client. It's all about person-centered care, not about human rights. Not about what's care workers want.
That's really interesting. So when I was preparing for this panel, I came across a really interesting concept, and I've seen it before, but it's this idea that if we look at technology versus humans, technology is really good at data. And they can turn data into information by structuring it, processing it, and giving it context. But technology can't turn information into knowledge, because that step requires discernment. And that's the person that you're talking about. It takes that kind of ability to say, oh, that person seems a bit sad, or it's a bit cold in here, but actually it's warm outside, so it balances out. So whilst the temperature on the clock says 18, which is perfectly palatable, if it's 30 degrees outside, 18 might still feel quite chilly. It's all those kind of things that make us human and give us those insights that turn us, we can get from data to information, but getting us from information to knowledge takes that human element. And I think it's really interesting that you kind of have kind of put a stop to that idea that it is one or the other. Mark and Calvin, I am going to come to you, but I've got a pretty controversial question here that I know both of you will have opinion on. And how do we prevent robotics from being used primarily to cut costs at the expense of quality, choice, and equity? I feel like that one's a cat among the pigeons question, but I think it's a really important one, and we've touched on it pretty much in every piece of this conversation so far. But I want the kind of practicalities. What do we need to be doing at this point while it is so early? And as Philippa says, while that commercial interest is in its boom phase, how do we balance the one against the other? Calvin?
I thought I had an answer, and then I don't. It's a really difficult one, isn't it? But basically, the value of the carers are just grossly undervalued.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to recognise that and address that. And it should be a team. They're worth so much as well, because these nuances, like you've just said there, it can be very hot, but they could be sat in a draft or whatever, or it looks sunny outside, but they're actually freezing, but it might still say 18 degrees. Yesterday, my mum loved this, but today she's sick to death of it or whatever. But me, as I've mentioned, anything I say or do, my mum's just attitude is I'm wrong. But Chrissy can do it. Yeah. And Chrissy's just magic. That's why I married her, There was something special about her for me and me for her, it seemed, because she said yes. That's there is no catch. You can't write a program and tick boxes. It's the magic, which I keep mentioning this word, magic, that people have. And that ability, that is actually real intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And that's the nuance, the thing. It has to be a partnership. It has to be a team. everything works well when it's working as a team. Put team players together. You get different teams for different things. There's no perfect solution.
No, there isn't. There isn't at all. Mark, do you want to come in?
Yeah, so in response to your question, I mean, I think there's other questions we can ask, but you talked about it. How do we prevent it cutting the? It's a cost-cutting exercise rather than outcomes and the quality of care. You mentioned something earlier about the cost of robots, and we got to worry a little bit about those people who can afford it, get it, and get the best, versus people who can't and they get toys, which don't do the job. And I think, and then we make the assumption is that, well, they've got it, that's the same. It's not. And we talk about a two-tier system, and this is another thing which just drives inequalities. So and inequalities of outcomes. So I think there's that we've got to be mindful of. The kind of, I think the standardization risk in terms of this kind of, as I said, sort of technological paternalism is that what we're going to do is just apply this particular solution to people who fit a cohort specification, when this is about individualized care. And I think that there is that. You talked a little bit about data, really good at getting data, and this goes around the standardization risk. I think that AI is really good, but it's a tool which uses historic data to think what the next thing's going to be. It's a probability. It's a sort of device, really, or inference machine. I think that it's not thinking about the person in the future, really. And if we start using robotics and data in this way, that we are increasing that standardization based on what was rather than what is. And I think that we've got to think about the robotic dividend, and this is with technology more widely, is that the savings that which are made in packages of care and care delivery, in the time saved for the care worker, is put back and ring-fenced into the investment of increased wages and training for carers. So we've got to be really, really aware of the expense of quality by pulling these things in, and it supports the shift for a care worker coming from a manual labourer to a architect of someone's social well-being, and they have the space to do that and the skills to do it.
And also that they have the esteem of the system,
Yeah.
that is. So I talk a lot of time, I spend a lot of time at the interface of health and social care. And for me, that big driver is there should be parity of esteem between the two systems. It is the same, bedrock of care, whether there are clinical decisions made on top of that are layered. But ultimately, if you look at the machine moving acute care, moving community care, it is the care side of things that people, when you talk about people losing the NHS, it's care that they worry about. It's people that they worry about. It's that receipt of a human interaction that really cares whether you live or die, that people worry about. And that's the thing that when we dig down, people really value. And I think it's interesting that a lot of the sums that I see around, like, we're going to make these cost savings by introducing this technology, don't account for how long is that technology going to go before it needs to be replaced because it's obsolete. How are we going to pay for the upkeep of that technology? And Becky, you might have some insights into this in your work with the university. How we are taking what is a capital spend, so it's seen as a one-off outlay, although we know it's not, against what are recurring costs of carers. Becky, I wonder if you've got something to join us on that one.
Yeah, and it's one of the things I raised with the university, the upkeep of a robot or, some type of service in relation to having an extra carer or, I think when we start with cost cutting, it's never going to end well, especially with regards to care. And I don't think we're well enough into the journey to know, whether a £42,000 robot could replace 2 housekeepers.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be interesting to see how that goes. So yeah, watch this space because we are planning to try and do that. So hopefully, I can bring some more information to that.
Yeah, and I think that's the other thing as well, is we're all talking about robots, and I know most people's minds when you think of robots goes to, like the full version animatronic person. But robots are lots of things. They're lots of technologies that either replace a single task or, automate something. And some of them are very small. And if they're very small, then they could. I feel like the very small ones feel like they could generate a cost saving, but that cost saving is actually very small in comparison to the cost of a carer. And as Mark said, so I, in a former life, used to work in public health, and all I ever wanted to do was move money. Every time someone didn't get cancer, we take that treatment money and we move it upstream, and we stop 6 people getting cancer. It's not that simple. My public health colleagues will have a nightmare. But I think if we can have that principle in operation, we're talking about the NHS making these shifts, from analog to digital to community-based neighbourhood health. All of that is only possible if we move that money into that preventative space. And what is more preventative than social care? Philippa, do you want to come in on this?
Well, just quickly, I was thinking during the discussion that we are in very turbulent waters at the minute because we want to know what the potential of robots, big and small, robotic technology will be, but we worry quite rightly that it may end up being a luxury for the rich. If you can afford it, you can buy it for yourself, or probably, I mean, given the stage of every public service at the moment and the external world, trying to save money, we almost want a system parallel to medical trials for new drugs, whereby you have NICE or somebody at the end of the rainbow, which will actually look at what appear to be the cost benefits, who would actually benefit, who might not, what are the areas for future development, not to actually stop research and development because we can't, it's actually here to stay. But I think this comes back to the question of ethics and standards too, and the point you're making, a lot of the development and research will be around small things that will make a huge difference and could very well end up in our supermarkets, perhaps in due course. Well, that was always the hope with telecare. It's never quite happened, but it might be. But I think we've got to look at those issues, because what I certainly would not want for my son would be to find that by opting for something, which I quite probably would have to co-fund because everything's so expensive now, that I was actually part of a sort of commercial entity, and that commercial entity might drop all future maintenance or development because they decided it wasn't worth it. It's not just the initial development and purchase, is it? It's whether you can keep the robot on the road, if you like, or on the walk or whatever it is for a period of time. So I think we do need to think about how we can have some sort of central oversight, not rigid regulation, to know what's happening and to help people like me understand the decisions that we are making if we or the people we care for are invited to opt for robotic care and support in the future. And I love that actually comment about if it works well, we can turn people like myself, I can see myself often as having been a hard labourer, into skilled expert architects of good futures for the people we care for. That's what we actually hope robotics and AI will help us achieve. And we have to be careful that we don't lose that ambition on the way.
No, absolutely. I think that's really, and I agree, Mark. That was a really lovely sentiment. And again, I go back to this point of this human empathy piece. It's the point Irene made in the chat and Soraya earlier on. We have to maintain that thread of humanity, and let robotics and AI be what it is, a tool to make us better at that, more efficient, or more cost effective, but ultimately keeping people in receipt of care from people. Becky.
Yeah, and I think, we're so early on that we haven't seen them benefits and outcomes. And so if we're talking about a medication dispenser, which is classified as a robot, that still needs some element of supervision. Or you're talking about, a humanoid robot or a companion robot, they still need them humans to supervise them, see what they're up to, and ensure that they're doing the job that they're meant to be doing. So I think at the moment there's no cost savings, because you're outlaying double the money, really.
Absolutely. Okay. I've got one last question. Looking 5 years ahead, what realistic human-robot collaboration would you like to see? And what one risk should we start actively mitigating right now? So this is asking you guys as individuals who are invested in this area. Go on, Becky, what do you want to see?
Yeah, so I want to see more practical collaboration between people and the technology and those that are, making these absolute mad ideas, not flashy just for the sake of it, and something that's actually designed with people, for people, that completely wraps around them. I think the risk that we actively need to mitigate is the quiet redesign of care around that technology, just on the back of what I've said. And the future risks is not that robots will take over. They need charging, right? They need someone to program them. And like I was saying about the laundry robot, I found myself yesterday talking to carers and being a little bit edgy about what I was saying, because I didn't want to upset them. I didn't want them to, oh, well, Sheila's going to lose a job in the laundry, when that's simply, it's not the case. But if we can slowly redesign care around the technology instead of around the people, then that would be a win for me.
Fantastic. Mark?
So in the next few years, I would like to see how, and it's a mindset thing, but really going from the approach robotics, making a job which is physically demanding, making it less physically demanding. The lifting and the shifting, the need to do a million things in a very, very short amount of time creates a stress on the mind and on the body, and a absence from being able to connect with the person in front of you, or challenging within that time. So I think there's a risk in there, but there's also that's what I'd like to see. I mean, I would like to see things like, we're seeing smart clothing, soft exoskeletons, which are getting onto the consumer market now. But looking at things like micro stumbles and applying corrective talk to stop that happening, I think that would be well within that move, and very liberating to give people the confidence to keep moving in their own about their homes for longer, and that would be really good. I just think a little bit in the future we talk about all these small devices, but I think in a way that it's going to become more, hopefully, maybe it'd be 20 years, that it's not a computer, it's almost ambient intelligence. We talk about smart houses, but it's something which constantly senses and adjusts to one's environment, flags things up for humans to make decisions on. But I think that whether it's chairs that help you get up, walls which sense things in the room, and monitor health and things like that, or shoes that monitor gait. I think they're all very useful, but I think it's going to almost become visible and then invisible and become more ambient, and that's what I'd like to see. But that ultimately will create a renaissance in human contact. And it's really weird, isn't it, that we talk about AI and technology and various other things, removing the humanity from it, but actually it might be the answer to making sure that real care, this bit of care, actually gets valued and is invested in, and the humanity that delivers it.
That's really hopeful, Mark. I really like that. And I like this idea of, actually, it's not one technology, is it? It's not one computer. It's an ecosystem that as you say, would evolve around all of us. Mohammed. Oh, I think you're still on mute, Mohammed.
Yes, I would like to say that I want to see the collaboration with the robots, like doing the physical type work, like you can say the delivering supplies of like meals, medications, or like not administering them. Should be administering by a human one. And I want to like see them or like lifting and transferring patients that gonna give relief to the like to the carers, which like we like not having injuries like back pains, or like pulling their muscles. So that can be like a good thing, or cleaning and disinfecting in the house. So that's all, like that's what we want to see them like doing collaboration with us, not taking over everything.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mohammed. And I think that's really key, isn't it? You, as a care worker, you know, are optimistic about what this could do to do, as we said at the very start, the hardest parts of your job. Calvin, what about you?
Yeah, I'd just like to more or less echo the last couple, really. But I'd like the front line, the coal face, to actually be paid far more attention to, because those people actually want to do that. They want to care for people, and you can't ask any better than that. So I'd like, the AI, the robots, to actually listen to the front line and perform whatever they can do to assist that front line. That's all I would
Yeah.
like to see.
I mean, and what else could we really ask for? And I think again it goes back to Becky's point where we have a world where care is like technology is designed around care rather than care being designed around technology. And Soraya in the chat has just put a really great comment around the idea of a kind of Black Mirror scenario. Philip, I know you struggle with the chat, so I'll read this for you. I'm worried about the Black Mirror scenario, where corporate greed turns care into a monopoly. If we aren't careful, the dignity we talk about will only be for those who can afford it, while others get a budget version that harvests their data with adverts. We need robust, formal written ethics now that treat care technology as public good like water, electricity, rather than a commercial product that can be used to manipulate the vulnerable and sell data about what people eat, drink, etc., to sell to insurance companies. I think that's really powerful, and I think that, I mean, there's something slightly dystopian about it, but I think it is realistic. And Philip, I'm going to come to you next because you are the one who has raised most vehemently this idea of, companies are here to sell us a product. So what do you think?
I think that the commercialization is a risk. I think that all care, in a way, is like a jigsaw. And if you put all the pieces together, you're lucky. You actually get the right support that enables people to have the right life. I think my optimism would be that if we really talk, and we need a public debate, not just a quiet sort of inner circle debate about the use of robots and AI, then we actually we actually might end up with much better care because people themselves will feel that they're empowered to talk about what they need in order to have an ordinary life. And there will hopefully be a wider range of options, which would include robotics and AI. But I think, and it's very difficult at the minute, that we have to somehow or another get the constant talk about cost saving out of the room, because cost saving now anyway is not necessarily cost saving down the line. If my son hadn't had the support from robotics and AI as well as people earlier on, he would have cost a fortune to the local authority, the NHS and myself. We actually can show that we saved a great deal of money. That wasn't why we did it. We wanted Simon to have a good life. But I think we have to be thinking of data. Actually, we have to be collecting our own data about what the positive difference is and what worked, and And we have to beware, and we have to note, and we have to raise a public debate about the commercial interest, because if anything new is being developed, we will naturally get commercial interest. You get them in the drug market and medicine too. But how do we control that? Well, I don't know how easily we can, but we have to talk about it. And I think today's webinar has really highlighted for me the issues, big and small, that we do need to talk about, and thereby demystify something that most people feel a bit bewildered by. I do quite often, but see its potential to actually make social care better able to do what it actually wants to do, and not to be the Cinderella service, which sadly so many people still see it as.
I think you entirely hit the nail on the head, and I think everybody has. It's this constant tension, isn't it, for a sector that, as you say, Cinderella service, I always call it the poor relation. Cost saving, just because it can happen doesn't mean it should be the aim. Okay, well, everyone, thank you so much. I'm going to draw us to a close there, because I am really aware that I and the rest of the panel could talk about this all day, but I'm also conscious that this has run over lunch and everyone could do with a cup of tea. Thank you to all of our panelists for being so candid, for sharing your expertise. I really appreciated listening to you, and I'm sure our other attendees have. And as this is the wrap on our Difficult Conversation series, thank you all who've attended. It's been brilliant for us, and we've really enjoyed having everyone engage in the chat, engage and sign up for these events. So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day, heading straight into Easter, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Brilliant.